when you're diagnosed, you're not given a handbook on how to do this. Nobody tells you about ableism. Nobody tells you about internalized ableism. Nobody tells you how to advocate for yourself. You're told the very medical model lens of living with a disability, of this is your treatment, this is how you manage yourself, these are the medical
This is your
services
lot.
available. If you're lucky enough to live in a country where you have access to medical services, that's where it stops. And you walk into a workplace, fantastic, amazing, they're really accessible, they're really inclusive, they're disability confident, and they ask you what adjustments you need, and you sit there and say, I have no idea. No one's told me what's going to make my life, more manageable, or what barriers it's going to break down. Nobody's telling us that. So it is such a double lens of, one, we want it to go to absolutely everybody to educate themselves and understand our community and how to do and be better, but also it's for our community as well, so that we know how to navigate this world that isn't working for us, because it's so isolating. And if you don't have a disability tribe and you're not part of, a disabled community or your conditions community, it can be very, very isolating and very lonely. Yeah.
I can imagine. That's one of the things after our conversation the other week is I was thinking about representation, and I come from a completely different side of the spectrum of thinking on these sorts of topics. And I used to think, oh well, why would you need representation if you surely crying out for representation to a certain degree within like films and things like that, you think, oh, it's a lack. I used to think, oh, it's a lack of being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes or whatever. For example, like I used to love the Blade comic books. I got a massive collection of them, all these sorts of things. And obviously, it's a black hero, it was a vampire, and then Black Panther, all these sorts of different things. It's like, and then there's aliens and all these. But then I thought of it in terms of like projects. So one of the things that the Network Rail advocates for is having wayfinding steering groups. And I thought sometimes we don't always know what's best for ourselves, particularly in terms of design and things like that. But then I thought everything moves so slowly, and everybody, particularly in the case of where the politicians are concerned, if it's not a if it's not a topic or a subject that's being driven by someone that really cares about it, it doesn't go anywhere. And that drove home to me. And I thought that is why representation is important. It's that people can champion their own causes and actually see them to fruition, as opposed to having some sort of nominated champion who is hot on it for 6 months, but then never talks about it again because they're not actually being affected by it. So why should they care once the spotlight's gone? And that was sort of like my whole, after our last conversation, that's sort of my whole, I suppose you could say, it comes to Jesus moment on that sort of topic.
I mean, representation again is such a difficult one, because it's not about inspiring disabled people to get up and go and do something, which is what people think representation is. It's not just, it is also, seeing someone who looks like you, or you can identify with their experiences and saying, well, if they can do it, I can do it too. But we have to be very careful with that being the message around representation, because what you're effectively saying with just that message is, again, the reason disabled people aren't doing stuff is because of us. It's because of how we feel. It's because of X, Y, and Z. The barriers, and again, this is the difference between the medical and the social model. The reason I can't do things is not because of me and my mentality and my ambition or my drive. The reason I can't do things is because I'm living in a world that isn't built for me. And having that second part of the representation conversation of saying, nothing about us without us. If you're going to make decisions that affect disabled people have to be present at the conversation. And that's not just health and social care, which, since time immemorial is where our conversation has been. It's the sector we stay in, and that's where we lie. It's not just about health and social care, every single aspect of life. And if we aren't part of those conversations, there you are not going to see progression. But it's not just tokenistic, and it's not getting 10 wheelchair users in a room together and calling that disabled representation. That's not what it is. It's diversity of voice, it's intersectional voices, it's diversity of experience. And that consultation and that conversation actually being used effectively, you have to follow it on. The second part has to happen. Because right now we aren't in enough positions of authority. There are some incredible, very authoritative disabled people in this world who are making monumental changes to the world, but there isn't enough of us because historically we've been very overlooked. So for right now, these conversations are one of the biggest assets that we have, but we have to make sure that they are being followed up with. They aren't just an in the moment, kind of here, have your tokenistic moment of representation. It's got to be part of the whole food chain.